Hey everybody, Brian here at the Cabinet Joint. If you've been into cabinetry or remodeled a kitchen before, you probably remember that sinks come in lots of varieties. Back in our grandparents' day, all you had was drop-in sinks. Well, nowadays we have what we call farm sinks or apron sinks. That's where the sink is actually cut into the front and protrudes from the front of the cabinet. The purpose of this video is to show you how to assemble Conestoga's apron sink or ASB cabinet, also known as a farm sink. What I want to do before we show you how to assemble this is just talk through some of the specifics of this particular cabinet. So when Conestoga builds these, they don't know what sink you're using, and your sink selection is critical because they give you a trimmable opening, and you can come all the way out to within about an inch of the edge of the front frame, and you can go down as far as 10 inches. If you're going to go deeper than 10 inches on an inset job, you're going to get too little of a front frame here. If it's overlay, your doors are right up to the bottom of that sink. So you really want kind of a 9.5, 9.75 deep sink as your max. If you have a sink that's deeper than that, talk to your cabinet coach. That's all I'll say. It doesn't mean the game is over. The standard apron sink comes with a trimmable face, and your sink can't be bigger than about 9.5 inches before you have to start thinking about things, okay? We always tell people, just because you're ordering a 33-inch or a 36-inch sink doesn't mean you order a 33 or a 36-inch cabinet. You always want your cabinet box to be 3 inches bigger than the sink you're putting it in, because you've got to have enough material to cut that U. You want to have some wood next to you. Can you imagine if you had a dishwasher right here and you had to remove all this material? Now you've got your beautiful roll farm clay sink right up against your stainless steel dishwasher. You've got to have some wood in here. So a 36-inch sink means a 39-inch cabinet, okay? So remember your sink cutout. Some of the newer sinks, actually when you do that cutout, there's a flange, some of them are stainless steel, there's a flange that will wrap over and cover that cut edge. More of the fire clay kinds of sinks don't have that option. They actually have a rolled bottom, and the sink just sits right up tight. So this cutout becomes critical. You may even want to roll the bottom to match the sink. So there's a lot of put the sink in, take the sink out to get it fitted right. Make sure you've looked at your sink, talk to your sink manufacturer, ask them if there's a template or a cutout template available. Those are not things we at Cabinet Joint are going to handle for you. We don't do these cutouts for you. We'll give you the thing and you cut it out yourself. That's a installation related issue. That's not a cabinet guy at the shop related issue. The other thing that comes into play with these is sink support. So these sinks, let's talk about a roll fire clay or fire clay sink is going to weigh probably 200 pounds by itself. Now you put all your fine dishware in there and 6 or 8 gallons of water, and you've got 400 pounds sitting on top of something in here to support that sink. Conestoga doesn't send along any support mechanism. I can give you some options here, but often the sink manufacturers sell support systems for their sinks that anchor to the cabinet wall. If we were to sell you something, it would be a 3/4 thick piece of plywood cut to size and then some cleats that go along the cabinet wall, and you can set that platform in there, cut a big hole for your drain wherever it may be, and set your sink on top of that. But you want to think through your support options because you don't want that sink falling away. I mean, it's not supported by the countertop goes over your sink. So it's only supported by whatever you set it on. Think through your support very carefully. Only last thing I'll give you is as this cabinet gets bigger than 36 inches, you will get a center divider in the middle. You'll want that center divider because that acts as support. But if you're looking at your cabinet right now saying, mine doesn't look like that, I've got 2 door openings, that's because your sink is bigger than 36 inches or your cabinet's bigger than 36 inches. So now let's get into the assembly and show you how this thing goes together. Okay, so let's get started on this apron sink base assembly. As with every assembly, you've got to start off with some pretty key tools. One is a bottle of Type Bond 2 wood glue. A couple of bottles will do a whole job typically. Pencil, we're going to be striking some lines, so we want a pencil. We're using staples. It's a Bostitch staple. Hitachi makes it. They all have a version of this. We have a rubber mallet. We use a dead blow. It's got sand in it. You might be able to hear that. In terms of what comes with the cabinet, you got your front frame. You're going to have a left and right side, which I have here, a back, and only a bottom. There's no top to this because it's a base cabinet, and in fact, because it's an apron sink, it only gets one spreader strip that goes at the rear of the cabinet. If you know what an apron sink or a farm sink is, the whole front gets the sink protruding from the cabinet face, which we'll talk about in a minute. So there's really nothing to do except one spreader strip. And then we have this toe board backer, which will show you how to put this on at the very end of the video. This cabinet's a little different because we have this leg extension option, but the toe board backer is kind of optional on most cabinets, not really optional on one with this leg extension option. So we'll show you that. So how every assembly starts is with our glue bottle. We have 2 shoulders, an inner and an outer shoulder on our groove with a bigger trench in the middle, which takes that black 3-inch spline that's sticking out of all your panels. That spline acts like a biscuit, basically. It holds everything together until the glue sets. I only want glue on my 2 shoulders, and I want glue wherever a panel is going to contact. So I have no top panel. Remember, we just said there's no spreader strip, there's no cabinet top, but I've got a full bottom. So I want to glue along the bottom, and then I want to do these 2 shoulders. So let's start with our glue bottle. You don't want too much, you want just enough. Too much is actually worse. It can actually jeopardize your glue bond. You just want enough so it's not running out the bottom of the cabinet, and that panel, when it goes in, will kind of squish it out and give you a nice bond. I'm going to run it all the way across the bottom there. These 2 shoulders once again. And I got a little, it ran out on me. You do want to have a wet rag around too, because when you're done with the assembly, you want to make sure you have wiped out the inside of the cabinet. I'll show you that towards the end. So now I got my frame glued up. One thing I want to comment on the frame before I get going the assembly, you'll see these brackets sticking up. This is an inset job. If you're doing inset, you want to mount your door brackets to the frame before you start your assembly, because they're very difficult to get on afterwards. So we've done that. That's in a separate video we can reference below. I'm going to grab my cabinet sides, and my finished interior is here, my coated interior. So this is my right side, or left as you're looking at the cabinet. Just kind of press that in. That's where you can use your mallet if that makes you feel better. I'm going to grab my glue bottle and run a bead of glue halfway. We don't go all the way to the bottom, because when I slide that panel in, I don't want the glue to puddle up at the bottom here. So we do it halfway, and that glue will get spread by the action of that dovetail. Same thing on both sides. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my cabinet bottom. You always have a finished interior and an unfinished exterior. You want the finished facing in, and you want these black splines that go into the front frame facing down. So I'm just going to line up my dovetail on one side. And once we get it started, you should be able to just kind of slide that down with some tapping action with your hand. And what we want to do is make sure, get my dead blow. What we want to do is make sure you have a nice tight gap across the bottom down here. Make sure our sides are still nice and in. Okay, so there's my left and right side of my bottom. I'm going to grab my cabinet back and get ready with it. Now how this works is you're going to glue. We have a flat edge of the glue bottle running this way. We want to put the glue on this outer panel. We don't want to put it on this shoulder here, because that's going to be a finished surface of that back. We want the unfinished panel edge to touch that unfinished rabbet. Use my finger as a guide. Same thing here. And now before I put that back on, I got to put my spreader strip in. So my spreader strip again has an unfinished side and a finished side. I probably have to put my back to the camera here for a second. We just want to put a little glue where that spreader strip's going to go towards the back of the cabinet. And slide it in using the dovetails. And just let that kind of hang out for a second. Now we can drop our cabinet back on. I've left a sticker on this panel to show you something. All these panels that I've just worked with, left, right side, bottom, back, they all have a sticker like that. Conestoga uses those in the manufacturing process. If you happen to have a damaged panel, has a big scratch in it, or there's a missed machine, or it's the wrong size, just take a picture of that with your cell phone, and when you go to request your replacement, give us a picture of that. That tells us everything we have to know about that particular panel to get you a replacement. So on these cabinet backs, there's some scribe lines here, and those scribe lines line up with these panels. So we're going to flip this panel finished side in. I'm going to line that dovetail up with that line, and drop it in. And for now, I'm just going to work on the bottom. I'll pull that spreader strip up into that dado in a minute. I want to make sure I'm fully seated along here, and then I'm going to grab my stapler. And just to hold it, I'm going to put a couple of staples across the back here. That'll hold it for a minute, and I want to talk about these cabinet sides. If you've got any clamps, I'm just talking about the typical Irwin blue, Ferguson makes them, you can get them at Lowe's or Home Depot, just a hand clamp. They got a squeezy hand clamp. If you have one handy or you want to go buy a few for your assembly, we like to suck these cabinet sides in and hold them while we're stapling. You don't have to do that, but we like to do that. In our case, I'm just going to do it the way you might be with no clamp. And I'm going to show you something. What you're going to do is take your pencil. If you need a straight edge, you can, but you want to line the pencil tip up with a dead center of that panel. There's no scribe lines for this from Conestoga. You're going to draw these. And just run a scribe line on both sides. This is going to make the assumption it's an unfinished side on both sides. If you have a finished side, painted, whatever, you don't want to put a nail through that, we're going to pin it this way. And I'll show you that in a minute. But we're going to pin these off to hold these cabinet sides nice and tight. Follow your scribe line. Now that I've got this nice and tight in, I can finish up my nail across the back. A note about these scribe lines, sometimes we see them wander off from Conestoga. They just might ride away from the fence while they're putting that scribe line on. Just make sure they're lining up with the dovetails before you seat that panel, and if it's not, you can use a straight edge. You can whip up a jig like we have here, where we just made some holes, take the pencil and run it on that scribe line. You just want to make sure you're not going to push a pin or a staple out inside the cabinet. So now I'm going to move to the front of the box here, and now this spreader strip has to go up and tuck into, it's got to tuck into the dado along here. You can hold it, you can clamp it, whatever you want to do. But now it needs a series of staples. One thing I wanted to show you, if you have a situation where this is a finished end, you're going to take your stapler, I'll pretend it's on the other side, say this is a finished end, you can't come through the side. Take your gun, make sure the gun has the heel. You don't want to have it elevated, level, because you're going to blow a hole through the inside of the cabinet. You want to toenail the staple this way. Keep the gun tilted and you just ram it straight up into the... like that. So any finished ends you have, flush ends, any kind of end that's finished and you don't want to have a staple coming through the side, nail your back on that way. Once that glue sets up, she's in good shape. So now I can stand it up and show you the finished product and a couple of housekeeping things. We want to make sure that our cabinet side, on both sides, the cabinet side and the front frame are dead level. If this is higher than this or vice versa, it means your cabinet's racked, because this front frame is made square and that's what's acting to keep the cabinet box from being racked. So we want level here, we want level here, and you might be able to see just a little bit of glue inside the cabinet, so you want to have a wet rag handy, a wet paper towel, and just wipe that out to get that glue out. It dries clear, so it's not normally that visible anyway, but who wants glue blobs in the corner? So just wipe that out real quick before you set the cabinet off to dry. Aside from that, the next section of the video, we're going to talk about this toe kick backer we're going to put in for the furniture leg option, or the extended leg option. Okay, we're back to talk about the toe backer installation. Again, this cabinet's a little bit different because of these leg extensions on this particular cabinet. If this was a normal cabinet with your recessed toe kick, this toe backer would just go between the cabinet sides and pin so that this surface is flush with the notched toe kick area. Pretty straightforward. In this particular case, because we have this extended leg option, we had to put these blocks in here. We measured 3 inches back, 3 inches from here to here, mounted a block, both sides, and that just acts as a cleat that we can put this toe backer in, and now we're just going to pin it here and here, same on the other side, and this backer is in place. If you're wanting to match whatever the finish is on the front, you're going to want to match that in here. Your sales rep, cabinet coach here at Cabinet Joint, can get you matching material if it's a custom species like this quarter sawn oak is, or if it's painted, whatever it is, we can get you matching material, and you'll face this with that and then return a piece of that into the back of your front frame, so when you're looking into this cavity, it's finished material all the way inside. So it's just a little bit of a workaround when you're doing the toe board backer on a flush toe cabinet like this, or any cabinet where the notch is not there. If it's notched out, it's super easy to understand, self-explanatory. Just put that in and pin it through the cabinet side right where that toe backer is. If it's a flush side, finished side, you can't pin through the side, you have to block it out in that case too. So any finished side, you treat the same way. Pretty intuitive. So that should wrap it up for flush furniture toe applications, whether it's an arch toe or this leg extension option, same principle. If you have any questions, give your cabinet coach a call. Thanks.